Okay, folks, welcome back to the Dynasty Fever YouTube channel. This is going to be my final 2023 rookie wide receiver tiers, final pre-draft wide receiver tiers. Going to move through these sort of quickly and show you, kind of update you where I'm at with these guys. There's a longer video that go a little bit more in depth into each prospect, so you can go back and watch that if you want more detail on each guy. And again, feel free to kind of pause this along the way. Maybe there's a guy that I'd skip over or something like that you want to know a little bit more about. So just a reminder on how I rank rookies, right? We're talking about a process that kind of compiles my own watching of film, looking at what people who watch film longer than I have say about it too, pulling together analytical data from several different sources. Just kind of combine all that research, and I come up with rankings for you and for me. And what I'm trying to do with that is not just be straight player eval. They're not NFL draft prospect rankings. They're fantasy football rankings, right? So it's a little bit of player eval, expected draft capital value and cost, right? And importantly, how it's going to translate into fantasy football points, right? They're not even necessarily the order in which I would take the guys, even now, right? Before the NFL draft. So, for example, I have Cedric Tillman ranked ahead of his teammate Jalin Hyatt, right? But I won't have to take Tillman before Hyatt in a rookie draft now, the way the ADP is hanging out, right? So I might take Hyatt at cost, say, and then trade him to the person who took Tillman later for Tillman plus, right? So even though I like Tillman better, it's also a game of value, cost, market, right? ADP, you got to play that game, right? I personally don't just draft off my rankings. I take all that into account, and I would advise that you do as well. So, what do we think about this 2023 wide receiver class? I think it's better than people think, especially when you start to think about the depth of it, right? Like, yes, there may be only one real sexy prospect at the top right now in JSN, and compared to last year or some other years, there's better top names or more names at the top that we like. But really, there's depth to this class. You're 12, 14 wide receivers deep, and you're seeing guys that you like still. Now, chances are those guys are going in rookie drafts in the spot where I'll probably be pounding running back and tight end, though, or at least trying to. Might be hard this year because a lot of the running backs are going early in the first and second round. And so all that's left in the third and fourth round are sort of these wide receivers that may be depth pieces, but we'll see. The real NFL draft will tell us a lot with draft capital and landing spot, and sort some of that out, right? But you always want to be water. You always want to seek value and take best player available, best value available. You're drafting assets. You're not drafting for your team and for your roster. You got to keep that in mind. So let's go ahead now with the first batch, the top five, if you will. Really JSN in a tier of his own with the best floor and ceiling combo. Addison is a flawed prospect, but I think he has a safe floor. And I think, even though there's, some size concerns with him, particularly on the weight, and the frame, he is a very good route runner and separator, can probably play outside a little bit more than some of the smaller guys in this class. And I think, he's got good ball tracking skills, et cetera, et cetera. He'll probably need to go somewhere where there's an alpha, kind of like Devonta Smith has AJ Brown. So keep that in mind for a landing spot. Mims is the guy that I'm, above consensus on for sure. I love him. To me, you can get pretty much Zay Flowers or Josh Downs, or combining some traits thereof at a much better price. I want him to be round 3 in the NFL as a sweet spot. So like if he gets into round 2 in the NFL, then he's going to get too much hype, and he's not going to be the good price that he kind of still is at the moment with ADP. If he goes later than round 3, now he's a day 3 wide receiver, and he loses a lot of that a lot of that attraction. And, you know, he may be even a guy that I'm not even too interested in, except for maybe taking a swing on some upside, maybe, you know, late third round. But again, that's kind of when I'm pounding running back and tight end. So, you know, we'll see. I hope QJ falls into the second round in rookie drafts, Quentin Johnson, because I'm just not taking him at cost. There's just too many flaws there. You know, I want to have him even lower, but I think his ceiling tells me that I think 4 is a good spot for him. And, you know, Zay Flowers, he could be, you know, wind up being the best out of this whole bunch, you know, but there's parts of his game where I think he could end up, you know, just kind of being meh, and, you know, be sort of maybe, I don't know, a mid wide receiver too, you know, for the rest of his career. That's not bad, right? And certainly if you're getting him at like 112 or 201, that's not terrible, but you know, it's not the 2021 class when it comes to the top, the upper echelon. So yeah, Mims, I think, is the guy that stands out to me. You know, he's 10 pounds heavier than Downs, you know, which is right around Flowers' weight, and also, you know, 2 inches taller than Flowers. Hands, physicality, can win in places of the field, you know, besides the deep areas. I think more than people think. He's got versatility. I think that coaches will know how to use him. He's the guy that I'm really excited about, but I don't want him to blow up too much and have his ADP go through the roof, right? So the next 10 guys are a mix of a few tiers here. I think Tillman and Downs stand out to me as sort of the top of that tier 3, that I'm, you know, probably more confident in than the other guys in that tier. Although I do love Hutchinson, I want to highlight him. I think he's very underrated. I think he's got a safe floor. I think he does a lot of things well, even if no real elite traits sort of pop off the tape. He is, yes, on the older side, right? You know, he did play the full 4 years, but he was JUCO, so, you know, that's a little more understandable. You know, and he didn't have very good quarterback play at Iowa State. So, you know, I think the NFL is going to look at him and they're going to say, okay, he's in a class of small guys. He's got size. He's reliable. Can run routes. Can catch the ball. Isn't super athletic, but isn't a liability out there. And I think he's going to get late day 2 draft capital. If he does, then I really love him. And I still think he'll probably be able to be had at close to the value that he is now. You know, Rashee Rice seems to be falling in some draft circles. I might be out on him if he falls into day 3 in the NFL. Otherwise, you know, he's still on my radar. You know, again, an older prospect. You know, he does have flaws to his game, but there's definitely upside there. Hyatt, I'm pretty much out at cost on. He's essentially a one-trick pony. This is a profile that I would fade like 99 times out of 100. You know, he's got the speed, but they schemed him to get open every time, and he had like a running start or was hidden behind a guy, or, you know what, like he's just, I don't know, like, is he going to be good enough for NFL coaches to say, okay, we need to like take this guy and build like, you know, an offense, you know, passing scheme plays around him, right, to highlight him? I don't know. Or is he just going to be, you know, a guy who takes the top off of defenses, and, you know, maybe he's prime Will Fuller in his ceiling, and that's just not something I'm interested in. Jaden Reed, I think at cost is better than Jordan Addison. You know, so if you want a discount on a guy who's a kind of a tweener in size, he's got about 10 pounds on Addison, but like Addison, can win in different areas of the field and can play slot and outside. Mingo, I love, but I love him like within reason, right? Like, he's an older player with, you know, not much of a production profile. So like players like that, you know, it just, the buzz that he's getting isn't matching, you know, what I see. But at the same time, you know, I think the NFL is going to like him and might overdraft him. He's physical, you know, can block, you know, he can play big slot, can probably play a little bit on the outside. NFL teams are going to like all of that, right? And there's enough athleticism there, and enough route running there to certainly have a foundation, to be a productive fantasy option. So right now I have him at 12. If the NFL overdrafts him, I don't know that I'm going to bump him up too much. Like right now, you can still find him like mid third at the earliest, in rookie drafts. But I just have a feeling like if he goes like, I don't know, 25th or 26th to the Giants or some shit like that, like it's just gonna Mingo fever is just gonna get out of control. He's probably not gonna be a guy that I'm in on at that point at cost. If Boutte gets day 2 draft capital in the NFL, I might be back in on him, but probably still cautiously, and therefore probably, not going to get a lot of him because he'll go before I'm willing to take him. Parker Washington feels like a guy that I should like more. I think he's going to be better for the NFL than he is in fantasy football. He's got good size and hands. He's going to be relegated to basically the slot. And that's not always a bad thing. But as I've talked about in different places, the NFL is starting to change a little bit in more power running and more gap running and fewer 3 wide receiver sets and that sort of thing. So if your slot guy is small or like only slot, right, then I am sort of slightly adjusting and starting to get ahead of that trend a little bit, as you see with putting downs at 6, right, as opposed to some people having them 3, 4, or 5, right. And so Washington, I think, is no real elite traits pop off, the tape or anything in the profile, and I think what you'll see is a productive player, that might be a flex a few weeks here and there. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe he gets, late day 2 capital and it's something more to be interested in. We'll see. Michael Wilson, his injury history lowers his draft capital. I think he's going to be a sneaky value in rookie draft. So that's the type of player where even if he gets like early day 3 draft capital because of that injury history, that's an upside swing I might be willing to take, right? Because there's sort of this like context or exceptional reason why he got the lower draft capital than we would normally like to see. So the next batch of guys, we're starting to get into sort of longer shots, both in the NFL and for fantasy. The NFL seems to like Tyler Scott a lot. I think they should like him less. Again, I think he's limited. He's a speed guy. He's a slot guy. He's not terrible otherwise, but just a guy I'm not too interested in. I want to highlight A.T. Perry and Bryce Ford Wheaton here as definitely flawed prospects, but their size, I think, is helping their buzz. And I think it might help their draft capital in a class that's this small, that's full of small receivers. So, if they're getting late day 2, early day 3 draft capital, I'll be interested. There's definitely flaws to both. And I think they're both a little overrated right now. But if NFL teams are going to give them the chance, I think there's enough to work with there, where they could be, I don't know, wide receiver 4 on your dynasty roster, right? Josephus, right? He's sort of the raw upside play out of Princeton. He could end up being the best out of that entire tier of guys. He could be, a bust, and he may essentially have a redshirt rookie season, and we won't know for a while. I'm pretty much fully fading Tank Dell. He's got good skills, but it's mostly a size thing. There are other things to his game, that are flawed. But I mean, the guy's under 5'9" and under 165 pounds. That it just, the hit rate on guys like that is just terrible. I don't think he's, exceptional enough, for me to say, oh, yeah, he's gonna make it. He's gonna hit. He's going to be that outlier that I want to roll the dice on. Now, at the right price, right, I'm willing to roll the dice on just about anybody, but I don't think I'll be, I don't think my price of rolling the dice is going to be where I have to pick him in rookie drafts. Charlie Jones, I think it's a cool story, right? Older prospect, goes to Buffalo, goes to Iowa, ends up at Purdue, ends up being productive, has a good game against probable round one cornerback Joey Porter Jr., right? I just think it's a trap. I just think, there's just very limited upside there. Sure, fourth round, whatever. But again, I'm trying to pound running back and tight end there. So we'll see. I think, I just don't see the buzz for Trey Palmer. I think he's speedy and there's really not much else there. I mean, I'm not saying he's terrible or anything like that. Like, there's elements to his game that are good, but I just don't see the buzz that he seems to be getting in both the NFL and fantasy circles. And so not the type of guy that I'm going to really be interested in almost at all in rookie drafts. So these are this next batch of guys are interesting. Might be some guys to put on your radar as far as post rookie draft waivers. I do want to highlight DeBose and Tucker as probably having the best chance to kind of be those sleepers out of this group. To be the type of guy that I might want to grab, in the late rounds of a rookie draft and not risk them being on waivers, or they're the priority guys that I'm going to be looking for on waivers right after. I just think that those two out of that group probably have the highest upside or biggest chance of being that sleeper. DeBose is a very good blocker, has a size athleticism combo that the NFL is going to love. He went to a small school, but I think there's a there. Same thing with Tucker. I think, for his size, very physical. But again, group of five, he's probably going to be relegated to the slot. But there's a there. I'm willing to kind of take a look at those guys than pretty much any other guy in that batch of receivers. So those are names to keep in mind as well. So this is more sort of the deep guys, right? I love my deep cuts, especially at wide receiver, deep sleeper potential, and Rip Van Winkle sleeper potential because they're such deep sleepers. You can see the names there and the blurbs on the screen. I think I would highlight Antoine Green out of that bunch as being, I think, perhaps the best shot at being a surprise sleeper. CJ Johnson is slow, but like there are other things to his game that are good. And I think if an NFL team says, okay, let's try you out at big slot, there's some chance there. Keelan Harris is interesting. He's D2, right? Oklahoma Baptist. And again, just some guys to keep an eye on as far as, if you hear their name called or if you see a team sign them as UDFAs in the couple days after the draft, some names to keep an eye on there for you. All right. So I put the first names on that slide too, because the chances are this might be the first time you're hearing or seeing some of these names. All right. So that about does it for where I'm at with my wide receiver tiers, my wide receiver tiers update. Dynasty Fever, new episodes every Thursday. You can follow me on Twitter at @FFJunkie_. And of course, follow the show on Twitter at Dynasty Fever Pod. That's a wrap. Thanks for being with us.